Hi, everybody. I'm George, and this is the best little horror house in Philly, the show where we talk about the best horror movie ever made, according to our guest, at least. And I'm psyched to have today's guest. He's a great actor, writer, comedian, and a host of the recently revived Dark Weeb Podcast, which I'm thrilled about. Please welcome Brodie Reed. How you doing, dude?
Hey, what's up? We're constantly reviving over at the Dark Weeb. We are constantly dying and constantly reviving.
Hey, it wouldn't be a comics-centered thing without it, right?
Yeah. Dang, that's a good point, actually. We try to make it as casual as possible because me and Cody, especially Cody, are like pretty busy. You know, he's writing on Rick and Morty, so it's a good excuse for us to just be lazy and take a week off. And then we always want to have cool guests, and then they're always busy. But if we're updating regularly, it means that we don't have a lot going on, which is so it's a blessing and a curse.
Absolutely. So I mean, you guys talk about comics and anime and stuff all the time on the show, but how did you get into horror? Where did that come from?
I think it's definitely something that's like not necessarily instilled in me from childhood. Like when other kids were getting into horror, I was like, no thanks. I was like, it's too scary, it's too gross. I remember I didn't even get into Resident Evil, the series, until like Resident Evil 4, because I'm just I was a fucking casual. Then, I don't know when it happened exactly. I mean, like, it always something I was like passingly interested in, and then I realized I wasn't nearly as hardcore as so many other people
right.
Who I ended up becoming friends with. And then I kind of like, I'm not sure when it happened, but probably around my late 20s. When I was just thinking about this the other day of just like, one of the things that I like to do when I'm having like an antisocial episode is I'll get like really into, say, like Grand Theft Auto 5 or something. You ever play Grand Theft Auto 5?
Yeah, man, it's the perfect kind of game to just throw yourself into.
It is, if you like, fast cars and crime and stuff like that. But like for me, what it was is I really like ragdoll physics. I really like watching just like random people get like shot, which like sounds so fucked up. But so for the listener who can't see us on the Zoom call or whatever, I'm goth and I'm constantly thinking about mortality, constantly scared about death. And there's something about horror as well that it turns your imagination and just makes it just a real thing. So like, even though it's like something can be really fucked up and gory, on a certain level, your brain is just like, oh my God, I don't have to imagine this.
Right.
In so many ways that are much worse. I have like a thing of reference for it. It becomes a real thing. Mm-hmm. It becomes a thing that I can like overcome my fear of. So
it's that kind of thing where it's like, if you can name it, you can overcome it. And you see it and you say, all right, I see how this would shake out. How can I get around that now?
Damn, free therapy for the listeners.
Exactly.
So yeah, I think it really started for me when like I was really into oh God, there's this series and I'm trying to think of what the name of it is, but there's a couple like really fucked up books that you could check out too if you're like into kind of like cosmic horror and stuff like that. Oh God, I'm trying to remember the name of it, but are you aware of the Canterbury Tales? Do you know what that is? Yeah. You sick fuck, you know about the Canterbury Tales, of course.
Hey, me and Chaucer go way back.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So there is Hyperion Cantos, which is this sci-fi series that takes the Canterbury Tales and just has this like really kind of like fucked up element in it where 5 of the last human beings left on Earth, this takes place like far in the future, are just being like tortured over and over for millennia.
Oh shit.
And yeah, it's really like fucked up. And the reason I know about it is because someone made like a point and click adventure game of it, which is just as fucked up as the novel. So I always kind of got like really into just the idea of like weird social experiments. Like the first horror series I super got into was Cube, which
Oh, yeah.
I want to talk about on the podcast, but I think you've done it already, right?
I was the one who picked it because I love Cube as well. And finally, I had enough, and I said, we're talking about Cube on the damn show.
I had a very short relationship with a girl where essentially we just watched the Cube movies and stopped dating when we stopped having Cube movies to watch. So it was like 2 weeks.
The relationship declined with the quality of the Cube movies.
Yeah. Exactly. And I just love the idea of, God, I don't know, just waking up in like a weird fucked up torture scenario and just seeing like, because I'm the kind of person who, like, if my life is going great and I have no problems, I have no challenges, I will just want to die. You know what I mean? Like, that's where my like brain defaults. So seeing someone in a situation where life is just absolutely hopeless and then like wanting to do anything to survive, first of all,
pull himself up.
I'm just like, what? This is so alien to me. So yeah. I guess that's my long way of answering your very first question. So
I think that makes a lot of sense. Like I said, I love Cube. Part of what I love about it is the idea of like, is someone watching them? Like, are they able to work together? Can they overcome what's between them in order to serve the greater good?
Yeah.
A lot of times the answer is no.
Just a huge amount of effort went into building it just to drop some people into it.
Yeah.
It just seems, it's so elaborate, and that's exactly why I like the Saw franchise, but like ironically the Saw franchise is so much more realistic than Cube.
So you mentioned that it took a while for you to get into games like Resident Evil.
Yeah.
Are you into horror video games now? Because I still have a really tough time with them myself.
Yeah, I sort of have a fondness to them these days. During the pandemic especially, I got really kind of into them. I got really into the Resident Evil 2 and 3 remakes.
Sure.
Because they're available on PC. And you have an easier time with those because those are third person and you like see someone not you like running away from situations. And
you can distance yourself.
Yeah, and the thing about those games is that like you gain power throughout every Resident Evil game. So like you are dominating near the end with like rocket launchers and stuff like that.
Sure.
Instead of just running away from everything. And I got really into those games for some reason, just because of the atmosphere, and even with like older throwback games, I really like that whole like PS1 aesthetic. I'm just like really enraptured by that.
Big pixels.
Yeah, totally. But the first person games, Resident Evil 7 and the new one that came out, too scary.
Too much.
I don't know what is to the side of me, and that scares me. Creepy.
Gotta have those
noises.
peripherals.
Yeah, exactly.
I remember when I was in college, I was playing that game Outlast with one of my roommates, and
That sounds familiar.
you have just like a video camera. You don't have any weapons or anything, and the idea is like you have to look through the video camera and use like the like night vision on it, and that's the only way you can really see anything.
Scary, yeah.
Scary as hell.
Adding 1 degree of complication to being aware of a monster immediately makes it more scary. Yeah.
And something dropped down from the ceiling very close to the beginning of the game, and I screamed, and my scream scared my roommate, and he screamed, and that his scream, like hearing something behind me screaming, just absolutely made me lose it. I genuinely fell off the chair.
Yeah.
And I just hear from downstairs, door slam, thump, 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 thump.
Oh, no.
Someone slams open the door. Is everyone okay? And my buddy Jerry is just greeted by me on the floor with friggin' Outlast there, a testament to my shame.
That's hilarious. That's great.
So, would you say that sort of like social experiment is your favorite subgenre? Is it really only these kind of physical torture ones, or do you like stuff like The Invitation, where it's kind of like a little more psychological torture?
I mean, even when it's about physical torture, for me, it's about the psychological torture. Like, I think partly it's because I'm just a millennial who has played video games my whole life. Like, I think it's just really fucked up how desensitized we are to certain things. And like I said, like, you know, sometimes I'll just like watch an hour of gore mods on Grand Theft Auto, and then I'll have to like, ask myself, like, is this extremely fucked up?
What am I doing here?
Yeah, it's just like things that serial killers do before they do that thing that they do. But then I just have to. It's so because I'll watch it like it's an ASMR video, like it's like really calming or something like that. So it's like not about the horror for me. It's just, I don't know, like meat to me is meat, but the psychological part is really where it comes down to. Like when you make someone make a choice and it's a Pyrrhic victory no matter what, like that's good stuff.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things I like to ask comedians who come to the show is about their opinion on horror comedies. If for the most part you think it's a good time, or if you think it's kind of too hard to thread the needle between the shifting tones.
Horror comedies, like, what are some examples?
Well, I mean, I guess that there are varying degrees even. Like Evil Dead, Dead 2 is kind of a horror comedy, but there's also stuff like Cabin in the Woods, which leans a little further on it.
Oh, yeah, totally. I mean, I'm pro. I think literally every genre benefits from a little bit of humor, whether it's Star Wars, whether it's some kind of thriller, you know what I mean? I think it's just like it adds touchstones for the audiences to like remember things that are going in. Like there are so many movies I watch where I'm just like, this could have been funnier. And just because it has like 2 or 3 jokes in it doesn't mean it has to be like classified as a comedy. I think so many things about movies are stupid. So I'm all for it. Yeah.
The movie we're talking about today is Saw 6.
Hell yeah.
A huge shocker of a movie to come so late in a franchise, but in my opinion, revitalized a flagging one because 4 and 5 are kind of low points for me in the franchise.
Oh,
but
really?
6, yeah, and then 6 kind of comes out of nowhere for me and really is like, oh, this fucking rules.
Okay,
Like,
just for context, I didn't see any Saw movie up until like 3 months ago where I was just like, let's do it. HBO Max, Spiral's coming out. So I watched all of them in the span of like a week and a half. Mm-hmm. And, you know, the first 2, I know about Saw. I think I've seen Saw 1 before, but then the first 2, I'm just like, okay, I'm not that impressed. I get it. It's a serial killer movie, blah, blah, blah. And then the most impressive part about the franchise for me is just the logical consistency and the boldness to kind of like tell one long story over 6 movies and then like have callbacks for like, I'm the kind of person who I like, if I see a movie, like I'll make a chart. I'm just like, ooh, what's the timeline on this? Like, you know what I mean? I really like that kind of stuff. So then, you know, by Saw 3, I was super into it in general, and it all kind of like blurs together for me. Like when you hit me up about doing this podcast, you were like, let's do Saw 6, and I was just like, actually, let's do Saw 5 because that's the one with the insurance salesman. And I like that, and you were like, no, that's 6. I'm like, oh. So I completely forgot a movie somewhere in the middle of that. But that being said, this one absolutely is the best one. I think thematically they all kind of like loosely try to gather stuff together. Like, you know, there's like reformed or like they have ex-cons in the second one, and then they have like, I don't know, I forget what's going on. There's like family dynamics and stuff.
Yeah, in 3 the kid got killed by the car, and he has to like decide if he can forgive him at the end. And
oh, okay, yeah. Oh, right, yeah. And then and then the one before this one was the one with the cop and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I think 4 and 5 and 6 are like a kind of a trilogy within the Saw story, even though it does associate, like it has obviously Amanda from part 2 is a huge part of all of these. Yeah. But that's where Strom and Hoffman come into play is in 4, I think.
Yeah.
It's funny because they do kind of blend together, but what you remember is like the set pieces, and that's kind of what this franchise is predicated on.
Yeah.
Is like, let's get these. I mean, there is the interesting storyline following the whole way through, and that is something that is very impressive about it. This, I don't mean this to be a slam because it's not. I think it's kind of like a soap opera.
Oh yeah, it's absolutely a soap opera.
Yeah, you get these characters who are like super villainous or you know, covering up their true intentions, and there's all kinds of intrigue and stuff. And then so you get that storyline carrying you through, and that's, we wouldn't need that much to carry us from set piece to set piece. And then the fact that we do get these great storylines and these fun characters to follow along,
Yeah.
and explore those dynamics that are constantly changing from movie to movie, I think it's great. I like the Saw franchise.
Yeah.
And I know that it gets plenty of hate. There are a lot of people out there who are not into it, and I get it. It is gory, and that's not for everyone. But I think that there is also a lot more to offer in the franchise than people give it credit for.
Yeah, absolutely. When I watch all of them, I'm like kind of shocked at how so many of the traps surprise me. I'm just like, okay, what are they going to do next? And then like it's always something that's really creative that I honestly would have never thought about. And the way that they are willing to tell the story is pretty interesting too, because a lot of horror movies you find out there's a bad guy, there's a good guy, it's a chase. And in this one, it's like, that the bad guy is gonna win at the end for sure, but like they will still keep secrets for you. I remember the third movie, especially, at first, I hated that movie. That's the one where the doctor gets kidnapped, the surgeon, and she has to perform the brain surgery on Jigsaw and stuff. And that movie at first I thought was like, this shit is a mess. I was like angry going into the third act. And then the third act just like has a flip in the story structure of it, where you find out these two separate storylines are two characters who are like married and stuff. And then it immediately like switched a flip for me. I was just like, okay, I think this one is the favorite one that I've seen so far. And then this movie 6 does a very similar thing, and I don't want to like get too ahead of myself, but like I already liked this movie just based on the theme, and then I ended up liking it as well just because of it genuinely surprised me with the twist. And I think part of that was because I wasn't super paying attention to the first act as much.
I think that is also something that the Saw franchise is really good at, is these moments that just make you recontextualize everything you've seen up to that moment.
Yeah.
A one puzzle piece drops in to crib from him.
Can't believe he did that.
And everything becomes clear. Part of what helped also make this movie effective is that it's the directorial debut of Kevin Grutert, who had served as the editor of all of the previous movies. So considering that how much not only this one particular installment, but the series as a whole relies on these flashbacks and dramatic reveals and everything, his familiarity with the series itself and the most effective way to handle these moments, I think helps to create a movie that works really well to catch new viewers up, remind old viewers what has been happening up to this point, and still keep things moving forward. It never really feels like they're like, okay, do you remember this part now? It all feels like it's part of a cohesive story, while still making sure that you're aware of everything you need to be aware of.
Wow, I did not know that. Good job, Kevin. Thank you so much.
Big ups to Kevin. I also saw that in the early stages of script writing that there was a plan for Jigsaw to take on the Mafia in this one.
Oh,
which I thought would have been quite the crossover that we've all been waiting for, I'm sure.
I'm really interested to see, first of all, which Mafia. Like if it's an Italian mob, that would have been funny.
Yeah, Goodfellas in there.
Like, how are you gonna punish that as well too? I don't know. Like if Jigsaw just shoots you with a bunch of guns, who knows?
Hey, it could still happen. Maybe they just put it on a shelf.
That could have been funny to get some Mafia themed Jigsaw kills, just like, you've died. You put cement ankles on all their victims.
Tonight, it's you who sleeps with the fishes.
Yeah, exactly. And then he just pours cement in a room. That'd be sick.
That would be good. All right, I'm back on board for Jigsaw versus the Mafia.
Yeah.
And this movie kind of came out in an interesting environment because, first of all, Paranormal Activity would come out that same exact weekend, which it did beat this movie at the box office. But more importantly, completely shifted the landscape of horror moving forward.
Was it the first one?
Yeah.
Wow.
It was that very first Paranormal Activity that kind of took over And it was a very like word of mouth heavy movie where everyone was like whispering to each other like, oh, have you heard about this Paranormal Activity movie? You know, that was the beginning of the rise of found footage, and it was unfortunately at the expense of Saw 6.
Yeah.
But also, Saw was huge news because we don't really have a franchise right now that's like appointment October releasing.
Yeah.
But for a long time, Saw was it.
Yeah.
And it had this huge cultural cachet because regardless of if you liked it or not, people knew what Saw was. You know, it was on the news and on people's lips as an example of what was wrong with horror, and it was in people's DVD players and on their screens because a lot of gorehounds who enjoyed the soap opera nature of it were still getting a lot out of them. You know, even 4, 5, 6 into it. And so to ensure that ubiquity continued, Lionsgate actually teamed up with VH1 to create the TV show Scream Queens, where actors would compete in front of James Gunn, Shawnee Smith, who plays Amanda Young in the Saw franchise, and famed acting coach John Homa to earn a role in this very movie, eventually being won by Tanedra Howard, who would play Simone, the lone officer and one of Hoffman's players at the very beginning.
Is she the one who chops her arm off?
Yeah.
Oh my
She
gosh.
won the role on a reality contest.
Jeez Louise. And she does just okay.
Yeah.
But good for her. Actually do like
Hey,
her.
I respect it.
Yeah.
It's a fun cold open for the movie.
Yeah.
And Costas Mandylor was returning to the role as Hoffman, having been firmly established as the inheritor of John Kramer's legacy and former rival to his other protege, Amanda, who had died in 3, but would be returning to this as well in newly filmed footage for the first time. Through 4 and 5, it was just archival footage that they had reused as flashbacks, but for this, she actually came back. They filmed a bunch of new stuff for it.
Wow.
And I think that she's one of the stronger parts of the Saw franchise. I think that she does a really good job of kind of playing this villain who you can still empathize with.
You empathize with her? That's interesting.
Man,
I almost
she's been
kind
through
of
some shit.
see her as the opposite because when Costas, first of all, Costas Mandalore, what a badass Star Wars name, and he's just such a perfect villain. I mean, that voice, his demeanor, it's great. But the interesting thing about him, even compared to the first Jigsaw, is that like even though he becomes the main bad guy, it becomes this kind of like cat and mouse thing. And that's the thing with him and the other detective. It's just like he is constantly covering up his own tracks.
Yeah.
Whereas with Amanda, she just seems like a sick fuck who like will do anything for Jigsaw. And because we don't spend a lot of time with her, she seems like a scarier element, even though that doesn't end up quite being how it plays. But that's how it feels like to me.
Yeah, I think that that's part of what I like is that devotion is kind of what scares me, you know?
Yeah,
that,
absolutely.
You know, I think that it's interesting that you bring up that split for Costas as Hoffman, because he said himself that part of why he likes this character and why he was coming back is because the way the character was torn between fully embracing the madness of being a serial killer and upholding the ideals of the original Jigsaw, who, misguided or not, was in his own way attempting to help people.
Yeah, there's nothing quite like multiple scenes where a serial killer is getting scolded by a better serial killer for being too sloppy. You know, you don't see that really. And
yeah, Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer. That's the only other one I can think of.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, there's something like mega cynical about it where like you as a viewer is just like, yeah, you should listen to Jigsaw more. Don't be so sloppy with your murders. It's really interesting.
And speaking of Jigsaw, Tobin Bell also returns, now dead for as many installments as he's been alive. And they also brought in Peter Outerbridge to play William Easton. I just recently saw him in the movie The Oak Room at a virtual film festival, and he was very good in that as well.
Interesting.
So good for you, Peter Outerbridge. Grutter did want to bring back Cary Elwes as Dr. Gordon from the very first one, but he was unavailable. He did actually come back for Saw 3D, but by the time they had gotten to that point, the character arc that they had planned for him had completely shifted. And so there was talk of him being more of a heroic character than he winds up being.
I just realized I haven't seen Saw 3D.
Oh, wow.
And should I? I think it's bad, right? Is it bad?
I will say I liked Jigsaw. Okay, which is the one after Saw 3D, so it might be worth powering through for.
Oh my gosh, I have so many movies to watch. I
well,
haven't even
then
watched
I would say
Spiral,
maybe
so.
skip it then.
Okay.
It's not that good. You
Okay.
could stop at 6. But they had a budget of $11 million, filming in just 2 weeks at the beginning of March 2009 up in Toronto. They made just under $7 million of that back on opening day, but they only wound up with $68.2 million, which is the lowest grossing of the franchise.
Fuck.
Yeah. It is interesting to me, though, because I think that, for like I said, for me personally, 4 and 5 are a little bit of a dip. And so for people to have kind of like dropped off and then heard that this one was good, seen it on DVD or whatever after it had already come out, and then being like, oh, it is good again, and then showed back up for Saw 3D. So I guess it makes sense to me.
Actually, I want to correct myself. I did see Saw 3D because I'm seeing that Chester Bennington was in the cast.
He sure was.
I definitely saw that because
Hell yeah.
These wounds never heal. Linkin Park for life.
Yeah, it was it's a bold strategy for him to be like, yeah, sure, I'll just be a neo-Nazi, tear my fucking back off.
The funniest part, this is a non sequitur, but it's literally like a 3-minute scene where he has to like tear his own skin off to like save his other friends and stuff. Yeah. And then he goes through all that, and then like, oh man, late Saw is so funny because it'll let someone get so close to saving themselves, and then they just won't. Like, they will always fail. I think my favorite one was, I'm not sure which movie it is. I think it might have been like 4 or something, but it's when a dude is just in a room and he's like hooked up to, hooks, just like all over his body, like in his like limbs and in his like ankles and stuff. And then
right.
he has to pull them out to like get the key. And then Jigsaw gives him 1 minute to do it. I have a stand-up bit about it where I'm just like, that's not fair, Jigsaw. Come on. Give him 2 minutes at least.
At least. Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
Reception was frosty, as is the case with most Saw movies, because every Jack and Jill movie reviewer who works for your daily newspaper has to go out and see the new movies, and if they're not a horror fan, this is pretty extreme for someone who's not into it. And so it winds up having, all these negative reviews, but all the things that they complained about, that was what Saw fans were coming for. Because they're like, there's a convoluted plot and graphic violence. And like, it's like, yeah, that's what I'm here for.
Yeah, every newspaper and magazine should be outsourcing their reviews of horror movies to
Here. Fans. Yes, absolutely.
It's the same thing with video games. Like, anytime, like, me, I'm a weeb. So anytime I see like a major game reviewer just being like, first of all, I have to say, I never liked turn-based RPGs. I'm just like, well, fuck you then. Get someone else.
This whole review is just out the fucking window.
Yeah.
I will say, in addition to, the usual people complaining about the violence and everything, all the usual suspects who complain about quote-unquote politics in art had incentive to whinge about the healthcare conversation that was raised in this. So,
oh really?
They all poo-pooed the movie for that reason as well.
Oh, what? Come on! I mean, it's there's so many universal truths, and I'm glad we finally got to this point, because this is why this is my favorite movie as just a hardcore socialist, is because the bad guys are just insurance companies.
Hell yeah.
And
finally, it's the actual villains.
I would watch an entire franchise just spun off of this one movie of torturing insurance company people.
They just work their way through that company.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would fucking watch that shit too.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if you were on Family Matters and then later got a job killing people, We're taking you out.
Hell yeah. And so, to get into the actual movie, I think that I mentioned this when we talked about the first Saw on the show, but I love the Twisted Pictures production logo because I think that it perfectly captures their vibe in a way that basically the only other example I can think of is like Neversoft, in terms of like perfectly encapsulates what they're all about.
Yeah, just a rusty screw and an eyeball is what the Neversoft one is.
Yeah.
Did they make the Twisted Metal franchise? Because it seems like...
Ooh, that does seem like it would be them. I don't think that that's them, but it does feel like it would fit in with them for sure.
It doesn't matter. It's all the same vibe.
Hell yeah. And so we open up with these two predatory loan officers, including the aforementioned Simone, played by the winner of Scream Queens, Tanager Howard. The other is named Eddie. They're both already in a trap.
The runner-up of Scream Queens.
He was this close, man. He is this close. She's woken up by a huge roach crawling on her, which is fucking gross. They were like, oh, she can't just wake up. We have to get some bugs in there.
Yeah, had to get some Fear Factor era bugs in there.
One thing that I always kind of enjoy about these, and I think that this is probably something that you will connect with as well, is that it's always their own panic that gets in the way a lot. Or at least prevents strategizing. Like the trap doesn't technically start until she stands up.
Yeah, simultaneously the most annoying part of every horror movie is just the sheer human incompetence of people. But also, like, as a writer, it's just, that's how you build tension. Like, so I rewatched that beginning just about an hour ago to prepare for this. And yeah, the first thing that stood out to me is, like, she wakes up and she goes forward. And then the trap activates, and then the very first thing that she says to the guy Eddie is, hey, don't go forward. He's like, huh, what? And then he does, because of course he does.
Yeah, what else is he gonna do?
Yeah. And then he's just like, okay, cool, and then they escape. That'd be really fun.
But so they've got these head harnesses on them with screws in their temples, and this trap is going to reference their jobs demanding technically legal interest rates from their victims, and alludes to the pound of flesh bit in Merchant of Venice. Only this time, there's no contract forbidding the shedding of blood. In fact, rather the opposite. They have to carve the most flesh possible off.
Yeah.
And whoever's scale holds the most at the end is the one who will survive.
This is one of Saw's all-time best traps, honestly, because first of all, it's a multiplayer game where you are competing to, scar yourself to like scar. It's fucked up. It's
really
great.
fucked up. I think that it's funny that it feels like they thought about doing like the bank for this maybe instead of healthcare.
Right.
And they were like, all right, well, we'll get a little something about like predatory loans and interest rates in there, and that'll be our cold open, and then we'll focus on healthcare.
Yeah, it's like, where are you going to go? Because you have to explain to the viewer everything about like the 2008 economic crisis. you short-sold all the housing market. You know what I mean? Like, it would have been really. That could have been what was the Big Short? That could have been basically the Big Short.
Oh man, I would watch that movie too.
Yeah, me too.
The Big Saw.
Yeah, that'd be. Ooh, shit. Let's pitch it.
And it looks like Eddie is gonna be the one who takes it, as he's hacking away at the side of his stomach, which is really fucking gross. Until at the last moment, Simone takes her whole damn arm off, and the screws go in, killing Eddie. I think that this is exactly what I like about Saw, kind of summed up, is there's a little bit of fun moralizing, some good editing that makes you think you're seeing more than you are, but also you do get some gross-ass, good-looking CGI. Like, you can see where the budget went to in this, and it's making that look good.
I cannot tell what is CGI at all, so I'll just say that's how good it is.
It turns out that this was set up and being watched by Mark Hoffman after he had taken over for Jigsaw in the previous movies. All right, I'm going to give just a super quick kind of synopsis of his arc here. Is he's been pursued by FBI agent Strom, who was getting close, but at the end of 5, in his efforts to kill Hoffman, Strom had brought about his own death by not taking a leap of faith and getting crushed in a room that compressed everything except the glass-filled coffin that Hoffman got thrown into by Strom, and was now having his fingerprints planted at the scene by Hoffman to cover his tracks. So that's where that character is at.
Yeah. One of the only things I really remember from 5 was just how iconic that ending is to like.
Yeah.
I mean, not to spoil it, but I mean, we're already on the next movie, so I guess it's not that much of a spoiler. But the detective goes into a room that he thinks is a trap, and then Hoffman, the killer, follows him in after, and then they fight, and then the detective gets him in the trap, and then it turns out that the whole room is a trap, and the only way out was the trap. It's so sick. And then he lowers himself down as he's crushed by these walls. It's sick. It's very cool.
And it's perfect because, you know, you walk out of that movie and that's the thing on your mind. You're talking about that incredible moment to all your friends as you walk out. That's how you get a sequel, baby.
Exactly. Very Cube-like ending to me.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I love the moment when Hoffman is investigating Strom's body and it just like falls with a plop. Like there's some humor in these movies. Like they're not completely self-serious. And I like that. But we also arrive at Umbrella Health, prequel to Resident Evil. Who knows? It says coverage you can believe in, which is very ironic considering what we're about to see. But here we meet health insurance executive William Easton, who is currently blowing off what's implied to be his wife's birthday dinner to go over a deposition that will defend them against Mr. Abbott's family after they're denied coverage for an oral surgery 30 years ago as an undisclosed condition led to his heart disease killing him.
Wow.
Huge villain right away. No question about it.
The scariest part is that I'm like a hypochondriac, so like when the insurance tells me it's just like, yeah, your gum disease could lead to heart disease, I'm just like, oh shit.
Oh no. I gotta get my gums checked.
Yeah, exactly.
Also, just in case you as an audience don't get it, there's literally a tank of piranhas in his office.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, famously ravenous scavengers. So they're really like, do you
Little
get this guy?
Yeah.
He also points out the dog pit, already a very dehumanizing name for a group of people who are there to pass that along and strip the humanity of their clients, pouring through documents for a discrepancy to deny coverage over, as evidenced by the Terminator, discovering some errors for a chronically ill patient who, quote, lives at the doctor's that could save them $200,000 over the patient's lifetime. Again,
wow.
they're like,
I'm mad about this fictional person, but
yeah, exactly.
It's true. It's how it works.
Exactly. It's so easy to put yourself in anyone's shoes, in this hypothetical person's shoes, because the insurance system is so fucked that almost everyone has had a tough time, getting coverage or finding a doctor or having to go see a general practitioner before a specialist before you can actually get a surgery done. All of the hoops that they make you jump through. To see these people be like celebrating it, being like, look, I found a mistake.
Yeah.
Like, it's just so easy to be like, oh, I get it. I fucking hate these people so quickly.
Yeah. Insurance companies just literally found out a way for capitalists to practice medicine without having a medical license. Like, if a doctor wants to perform a surgery and you tell them that they can't, you're practicing medicine, So,
yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what Jigsaw says. He says that, I thought medical decisions are supposed to be made between a doctor and the patient, but neither one of them actually gets to make the choice. It's the insurance company. And he's absolutely right. And it's the kind of thing where that's kind of where the bread and butter of the Saw franchise is making you be like, well, I guess I agree with Jigsaw on this point. And, you already, by getting you to soften on one point, they break down your barriers and kind of sneak in and tear down your defenses as far as him being a villain or not.
Yeah.
Or at least making it a little more controversial.
I mean,
he's still killing people.
I literally agree with Jigsaw in almost every decision that he makes, except for literally one, which is the second death in this movie, which is one of the weirdest ones in the franchise.
Yeah, that is a weird one.
Where he kills a janitor because he smokes. Which is super unfair.
Yeah. It's just like, this guy has high cholesterol and he still smokes. That's fucked up.
Yeah, for someone who is usually punishing people at the root of society's ills, probably not killing some random janitor for smoking for a lot of his life.
He's looking around the office like, who else? Who else can I take here?
It's like, I guess secondhand smoke is the thing.
Hank, you're in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Yeah.
So Hoffman gets called in by the FBI. His plan seemingly going off without a hitch as far as framing Strom. But Agent Dan Erickson reveals that they found Strom's prints and they need to get him, but that also FBI agent Perez is still alive after Saw 5's trap, where like a shard of glass exploded into her throat.
I love Perez. I have a crush on Agent Perez, and
she's great.
I'm glad shards of glass didn't kill her, because when she didn't show up in the movie after that, I was pissed. I was just like, I can't believe they wrote her off because she asked for more money or something. That, because I mean,
back, baby.
Yeah, getting killed by glass shards would have been literally the tamest kill in the Saw franchise, and it would have been one of the only ones that's off screen also.
Yeah. She gets a good death in this one, though, at least. She gets to go out in a good way. But
I don't even remember, and I'm so excited.
Well, we'll get to it. They're like, we concealed her for her protection because we couldn't, guarantee her safety without knowing who it was. But this dumbass Erickson is like, Hoffman, please work with us. We're going to tell you every step we make to catch Jigsaw, which, of course, is Hoffman at this point. Mm-hmm. Pam Jenkins, a journalist who wrote a book on Jigsaw, confronts Hoffman about wanting to get access to Jill Tuck, who is Jigsaw's ex, in return for toning down the sensationalism that she's been spreading about Jigsaw. He also talks to Simone, the survivor of the trap at the beginning. She's bitter, but does kind of seem to have internalized the intention behind it. Mm-hmm. She's like, I understand what he was saying about what we were doing and it being wrong, And then Hoffman's like, well, I guess you learned the lesson then. And then she's like, no, I didn't learn. What lesson did I learn?
Yeah.
It's like, well, you did learn the lesson. But I also want to call out the scene transitions here because they're not as flashy as Saw 5, but there are some really nice transitions in this movie the whole way through. And that's just like one of the little strengths of this franchise that people don't really ever give it credit for. And like, it's so easy to just do like boring transitions that for them to really put the effort in and be like, yeah, it's going to be like a fun, static fuzz that turns into an actual screen or pull out from one security camera and into another one. Like all these fun little transitions that are
we'll
good.
Throw someone through a glass door and then boom, we're in the, the police department,
Hell yeah. We join Jill Tuck, the ex or the widow, who was given a box from Jigsaw's will. We also see a flashback to the pharmacy robbery that led to her miscarriage of their baby together. And she's being called yet again by Pam and pulls out a photo of Pam from the numbered envelopes that she just unpacked, which is not a good sign for old Pam. During Eddie's autopsy, they find a clue, which is that the knife used to cut Eddie's puzzle piece had a serrated edge compared to the surgical quality scalpel of John Kramer. Not too difficult to read into that a bit about Kramer's work being much more deliberate as opposed to Hoffman being more reactive to kind of stay ahead of that pursuit, which I think is, an interesting thing to throw in there.
Yeah. Also, who's got serrated knives these days? I really got to wonder.
Hoffman, that freak.
Yeah, such a weird thing. Anyway.
They also find out that it's the same blade that had been used on Seth Baxter in Saw 5, and he was the one who was Hoffman's victim and the one that had really split Hoffman and Jigsaw because there was no chance of success or escape even after he did what was asked of him. And, Jigsaw's whole thing is if they learn the lesson, they get to go. And Hoffman said, no, this guy just is, this is just revenge.
Yeah, man.
I do think it's hilarious when Hoffman, who is a police detective, asks, you mean you can tell a different knife was used just by looking at some photos? It's like, yeah, man. That's how it works.
They really got the prints on all that stuff real fast, too. Like, they're still on the scene. First of all, Hoffman gets there late and he's surprised when other people are there. It's just like, okay, where were you? First of all. And then they've already gotten the fingerprints back. That usually takes a day or two. At least. At least. I know a little bit at least about that. So,
but they can, in fact, tell that it's the same knife. So the FBI is going to reopen the investigation, analyze the tape that they found at his scene, and try and undistort the voice on it to see if they can figure out if it was actually Jigsaw or Strom, who is who they think it is. And it is, of course, actually Hoffman. But Hoffman meets with Jill at her clinic and demands the envelopes that she got in the box, which she does give to him, saying that she's just interested in carrying out John's last request, and then flashes back to his reveal to her of Amanda after her test. And, you know, Jill is kind of an interesting character because there's a question of, like, what is your level of complicity with this by just kind of letting him do his thing? Like, she knows everything that's going on. She knew his plans. She's seen Amanda having survived one of these traps. She's now involved in carrying one out. And she just kind of gets drawn into this, even from beyond the grave, in a really interesting way.
Yeah, this might be the most put upon woman in all of cinematic history, to be completely honest. It's just like, she doesn't completely have a choice to get out of it. Like, when all this stuff first starts, it's just kind of like, John, I don't think you should do this. John, I don't think you should buy all this property. And then he sets up all of his traps, like, within just the span of maybe a year or something, like after getting diagnosed with cancer. So he's already an old man. And then he creates just like 60 rooms full of traps. Like, the whole series, we're seeing traps that he made during like his blue period, like his really fun artistic side. And then the entire time she was just like, oh man, please don't do this. And then it's just like, I promise I'll find a way for you to get out of it as long as you do everything I say, and then do a million more favors for me and stuff. So, like, I feel bad for her. Like, every time I see her in the scene, I'm just like, man, just let her get out of this. And then by the time where she's like taking a little bit more agency near the very end, I'm just like, it's hard to blame her anymore. She's just like, fuck it, you know?
The envelopes indicate that William Easton, from the beginning, will be the player, quote, in the game, and we rejoin him in his office where he shoots a security guard thinking that it's someone after him. Another crime that this guy has done.
Probably one of the stupidest reveals. I mean, it's early in the movie, so it's not a big deal, but it's just a big guy in a hoodie with a gun, and then he shoots him, and then oh shit, I didn't see your security badge. So
he's
stupid.
like, oh, you have a vest, you're gonna be okay. Like,
I told you not to wear your security hoodie in the in the building.
He's always shooting those guys.
Yeah.
But he thinks it's someone after him, but while he is trying to help this guy after being shot, he is in fact actually abducted by Hoffman in the pig suit. You know, classic iconography. It's weird that I feel like they underutilized the pig suit because it's very creepy to me.
I mean, I feel like I don't even know what's going on with it because they use it every time they kidnap people. And it's just like, is that symbolic? We've never talked about it. It's never been in any promotional materials. I honestly don't get it.
It's just weird. They're just like, oh, what if the pig had hair and wore a red robe? That would be weird.
Could have had a regular mask even.
I know. I think it's freaky. It's weird. Yeah. I wish maybe that they had explored it a little bit. Yeah. But it's cool.
Maybe it's because he's a cop. That's why.
Could very well be. Mm-hmm. When he wakes up, he's chained in a vise and wearing this oxygen mask, greeted by a video of Kramer explaining his trap. And interesting to note that since this is from beyond the grave and it no longer actually matters, this is the first video with Kramer actually giving the explanation himself on video. So six whole movies it took for that to happen.
Yeah, that was weird.
Yeah, all of a sudden you're just like, oh shit.
It's like, let me put my best robe on.
And he's like in the wheelchair at that point. He's looking real sickly.
Yeah, it's just like, fuck the puppet, fuck consistency. Let's try something fresh near the end.
You gotta respect it that he was always switching it up.
Yeah.
But he's decided that Easton, who invented the probability formula used by his company, has allowed the healthy to thrive while the sick are forced even lower. But, he says, this formula doesn't take into account the will to live. So William will have to do 4 tasks in an hour, each one unlocking one of the straps on his wrists and ankles that will otherwise explode. And I like that they show on the mannequin. They're like, look what will happen.
Oh.
We went to the effort of setting up these bombs. You're not going to not see them go off.
Yeah.
There is also a threat against his family. And they cut to a mom and her son who've also been abducted. And obviously, we are supposed to intuit that these are his wife and kids who he was talking to on the phone earlier. This is part of the grand reveal of the whole thing, where we will later find out that this is not, in fact, his family. But it's a very, very cool way, and I think says a lot about Kevin Gutierrez's history as an editor in terms of kind of using the Kuleshov effect for us to just kind of understand what they're trying to communicate, even if it's to mislead us. You know, they use it against us in a really cool way. So they've also been abducted. They're in a room with a lever that says live or die on the ends. Right to the point, that Jigsaw. And it's connected to a tank of hydrofluoric acid and their own timer displaying Easton's time. And this, I thought, was kind of cool, is that I did check, and as far as I could surmise, it does take place in real time, I think. Like, there was like 57 minutes, and I think that's how much time was left in the movie, which I thought was neat.
That's pretty interesting. Do you think that they A&R'd it in afterwards?
That may very well be.
Maybe.
Wow, I didn't even think about that. I was like, that's the power of editing, baby.
Yeah.
So his first task pits him up against, like we said, the office janitor, Hank. Every time they breathe in, the vice gets a little tighter. Unfortunately, Hank is a smoker, so he can't last very long and is quickly crushed to death. But as Easton falls out of this vice, he finds that he's got a stitched up gash in his side, indicating to us that something got put inside of him. But he's more concerned about the key in front of him, which will let him take off one of the wrist bombs, which is exciting for him. Pam got a note leading her to Jill Tuck's apartment, where she shows Jill a document that she recovered from the scene of John's death. And when Pam goes to leave, the elevator isn't working, and her alternate route, surprise, there's Hoffman again, always abducting people, snatches her up, brings her in as well. William is moving through. They're in a zoo, by the way, and he's kind of making his way through the aquarium section, where he's forced to choose who lives or dies, as he so often did. As you so often did. This time it's his secretary, Addie, who's a middle-aged woman with a family history of diabetes, a husband, and kids, versus his file clerk, Alan, a man who will disappear without a trace. And while he says that he supposedly should be choosing the one who has a capacity for a long, healthy life, as his formula said, he does actually choose Addie. And so this is what Jigsaw is going for him to confront the reality of his decisions and see that it's not just about facts and figures necessarily, and perhaps even he shouldn't be making the decisions at all.
This is, I think, the second funniest Jigsaw pick for people to die to, because Alan, literally just to show that he's got nothing going on in his life, when they show like video of his life, he's just sitting on a bench, just like eating a sandwich alone.
Just hanging.
Literally, Jigsaw was just like, this guy's a loser. No one will give a shit.
He's pathetic.
That is enough reason to kill him, I guess.
Wow.
What a bully.
We don't know what he was doing on the side.
Yeah.
But he does pick the older woman. I also will say this is our first look at Billy the Puppet in the movie. I like Billy the Puppet, although, as always, I will lament that they took away his cute little hat from the short film that he had when they first were trying to pitch it. He had a cute little bowler hat, and he had a little smile instead, and it was a very fun look for Billy.
Man, that might have been too much.
I think it would have been a very different series if that had been the case, but
Billy is always underutilized, I have to say.
That's true.
I mean,
very
we
true.
should have had half as many pig masks, much more Billy masks.
Hey, I could get on board for that.
Yeah.
William chose Addie, and Alan gets hanged to death from a barbed wire noose, which is kind of cool. It's like a interesting little twist on it. And she's up there on that tiny little platform still with the noose on after, and he's just like, okay, bye. Get out of there however you can. Which kind of makes me laugh as well. It's like, she's up on that platform. How the fuck is she getting out of there?
Yeah, I like to think of one of Jigsaw's assistants coming in, just being like, okay, I hope you enjoyed your experience.
Don't take pictures of the pictures, but you can buy one at the souvenir stand. Pamela finds herself opposite the family that we saw earlier, but in the same kind of cage room with the acid. Only she's got a tape from Kramer to listen to, as Hoffman is called back to discuss something by the FBI. Jill returns to St. Eustace Hospital to drop off an envelope and also to let her into the Kramer box. St. Eustace, I looked this up. I was like, I wonder if that name means anything to this movie.
It's from Kirk's The Cowardly Dog.
Yeah. Exactly. They were martyred, and a great show, and they recognized that, and you had to respect it. It was also a martyr who had his children taken by lions and wolves, which kind of, to me, sounds like how Kramer would view himself. So might be an accident, might not be an accident, but, you can kind of stretch it to make a connection there.
Okay.
And that's what I'm doing. We're also treated to another flashback where we see the rising tension between Amanda, Hoffman, and Kramer, who seems to be distressed at Hoffman's brutality. And then this jumps even further back as we see more of John Kramer's relationship to William, the guy who's going through this game right now. Specifically, his being turned down for an experimental gene therapy for his cancer, and saying that not only is he not covered for it, but that if he even pursues it, John will be dropped from his coverage entirely.
Rude.
This is where he gives that little monologue about doctors and patients, and they sacrifice people for the almighty dollar, and, you can't say that this movie is subtle, but honestly, I kind of appreciate that they're just like laying the message out there for people and being like, insurance companies fucking suck, and you should think that they suck too.
Yeah.
And I'm like, fuck yeah, just lay it out there for people. I don't want this to be like subtext.
Yeah, and this was a decade ago too. I mean, that's how true it's been.
Yeah, not a new thing.
No.
And back at the game, we join William now in the zoo's boiler room. There we find the lawyer who is prepping him early, Debbie. She has to cross a hot maze in this room while being navigated and assisted by William. But the real trick is that to show him what people are willing to do in a fight for their life, Jigsaw has placed the key in the wound in his gut. Classic Jigsaw move.
Classic.
He loves putting keys in people. That's like his number one thing.
Yeah, and it's just like, oh man, how can I spice up this heat steam maze that's literally the most complicated thing I've ever done in my life. Oh, I don't know. I know.
Now they're gonna have to fight like friggin' Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 at the end.
Yeah.
I will say the key thing is always fun because a lot of times they have to like dig into it themselves, which really grosses me out. But the eyeball one is like seared into my memory, where the key was like behind their eye and they had to like tear out their own damn eyeball and friggin' reach in there and pull that shit out.
Yeah, I forgot about that one until you brought it up, but thank you.
It's gross as hell. That's a good ass one. But she does attack him with this friggin' buzzsaw, and he fights her off until the spear gun harness that she's wearing shoots up through her head, sparing him. And he advances to his final test, but he doesn't enter after hearing bickering from inside, because it's the dog pit behind the spiral painted door.
We let the dogs out.
That's right. Well, who took the dogs in? Yeah. More like it. And there's a big spiral on the door. It's very dramatic, although I think it's less about what would eventually become Spiral and more about Playground Roundabout, because as he enters, he discovers quite the mechanism and one of my personal favorite traps from the whole
absolutely
from the whole franchise. This is a real good one.
Yeah, this is a high mark for me. Like from so many aspects, from a horror aspect, for like a writing aspect, for a character aspect. It's got a lot going on for it. Yeah.
They've all been strapped to it, and as it rotates, a shotgun will fire at each of them. But Easton can save two of them by getting stabbed as he presses the buttons to symbolize the blood on their hands from causing the termination of coverage and denials. And part of what makes this so good is that as they're spinning around, the sort of decorum and civility that they have starts to break down.
Yeah.
Where first they're just like pleading with him, like, oh, please save me, save me. Then when he finally chooses to save someone, the woman who has two kids, they immediately, now there's only one slot, they start selling each other out, lying to save themselves. This is so effective. And of course there's the added metaphorical application where they kind of represent everyone else asking insurance companies to please help them out, and they're choosing to deny 2/3 of the people. You know, you see all these people who are doing everything that they can because all they want is to be saved, and ultimately this guy is only choosing to save two of them.
Yeah.
Also truly brutal for the guy at the end to have to go around one more time once Easton has already saved the two people. And, you know, again, you can kind of be like, oh, well, it's much the same way. It's brutal for people turned down by insurance.
Look at me when you kill me.
Dude, that's such a great line. I really think that guy is making a meal out of that performance.
I would too. If I was in that scene, man. Woo.
He's screaming at him. It's a memorable trap. I think that it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, plus we got Darius McCrary in there from Family Matters, so.
Hell yeah.
Always wanted to see a cast member of Family Matters die. Just not that one, but there we go.
It's like the one more finger on the monkey's paw curls.
All right. Yeah. Exactly.
But Hoffman has been called back to the audio lab to hear this tape. But by now, Erickson and Perez have found some incongruities. Not only did the motivation for Strom not make a ton of sense, besides setting up Hoffman as a Jigsaw accomplice, but also they discovered he was already dead when he left those fingerprints. Bum, bum, bum.
This is the part in the Saw movie where I'm just happy to see all the characters again, and I stop following the logic. I'm just like, I'm just gonna trust that these detectives know what they're talking about.
All of these little things are getting teased out, and the audio is getting clearer and clearer. And one thing I really love, to speak to really appreciating the performance of Hoffman here, is that he really does feel like an animal in a cage, the way he's like pacing around and feeling kind of trapped there. And he's just like walking around the room, and they're like, are you okay? And he's like, oh yeah, I'm just like anxious about the tape. But it really ties in perfectly to the setting of this one, which is in the zoo. So, it's kind of very appropriate for his game. It all feels very specifically tailored to him, this setting, which is not easy to do when he's, so entwined with the Jigsaw area and, the fact that he's imitating someone. For there to still be a little bit of his own flavor to it, I think is interesting and impressive.
This is honestly the first time I'm realizing that it takes place at the zoo. I'm just trying to think of what animals were in that steam room.
I think that might have just been a steam room.
Yeah, I guess just an extremely complicated one, yeah.
Jigsaw was like, all right, bring in all the friggin' grating and everything.
Yeah, did you know that the end of Terminator 2 also took place in a zoo? Yeah, he smelt some inside of...
Exactly. Oh, yeah. Every zoo's got to have one.
Yeah.
The Philadelphia Zoo has a really nice one. You can actually take tours. But the audio finally snaps into place, and they're all distracted by it obviously being Hoffman's voice. And so he slashes the throat of Erickson and then throws hot coffee in Perez's face, uses the tech as a human shield as she shoots at him, and then stabs Perez a whole bunch of times in the gut, just friggin' shanking the hell out of her. And then he runs out to his car. He grabs Strom's severed hand, which he's been holding on to this whole time.
Oh.
Turns out he kept it just in case. He leaves a bunch of prints there to implicate Strom again, and then burns down the place with Erickson still clinging to life inside. Just really being like, fuck it. I'm invested at this point. In for a penny, in for a pound here. He's murdered, leaving a trail of corpses behind him.
You can tell that he definitely is sloppy. I mean, at what point in an extremely long string of murders do you just kind of like be like, okay, fuck it. Let me do everything here.
This is the point.
Yeah.
He heads back to the game, and he finds a letter that Jill left there for him. It's the blackmail that he did to Amanda to kill Lynn in Saw 3, which is the surgeon. This letter is also where we find out that she was the one who instigated the pharmacy robbery, which is where Jill had the miscarriage, which is where her and John's life turned upside down. And so,
What?
Yeah, you can kind of be like, oh, the whole thing is predicated on this one moment. Everything is connected, the ripples in time.
That's a little too much.
It is kind of funny. I don't mind it because there's so much of that already in the movies to me that in another franchise, it probably wouldn't have worked for me. But in this one, I'm just kind of like, okay, sure.
Yeah.
It's all her. But earlier in the movie, Pam gave Jill that letter after finding it at the crime scene. And so she now has it. She shows him. Meanwhile, the kid and his mom are in the room and running out of time. So he prepares to pull the switch, but it does nothing. And so they're all freaking out as well. Hoffman gets knocked out by Jill, while Easton finally arrives at the finish. And this is where we discover the big rug pull that Pam is his sister and who he was on the phone with at the beginning. And of course, an interesting swerve because we're led to assume that when Jigsaw says you'll never see your family again, he was talking about this woman and her son. In actuality, they are not related to Easton and in fact hate him because they are Tara and Brent Abbott, the family of Harold Abbott, the man we saw Easton removing from coverage earlier, now officially dead of heart disease, and the one suing him that he was being prepped for at the beginning.
Dang, so I guess he did get gum disease, which led to the heart disease.
You gotta watch those gums, everyone. Brush and floss.
I'm gonna do that right after this.
The TV crackles to life, and Kramer tells them that Easton made sacrifices to save the life of a loved one. Now they get to decide if he himself gets to continue living. As they play their game, Jill continues in the observation room. It turns out that the box had a 6th envelope with Hoffman's photo and the reverse bear trap that held Amanda in her game, and she straps him into that reverse bear trap. So a lot of stuff happening simultaneously. Things are really heating up. The rising action, denouement, all of the classics.
Yeah, for sure. And then the classic errors of humanity.
Yeah.
Just fucks up.
He sure does. And Easton is pleading for mercy. Tara goes to kill him, but can't. Brent, on the other hand, no such qualms. Hot-headed young man with a recently deceased father. You know, he's not feeling well. He slams the lever down. This swings a platform of needles down and injects him all over with acid. And he melts in this friggin' grody as hell fashion. I love it. This like last second moment of huge gore, like what a friggin' leave it all on the floor moment for them.
Yeah, it should be all at the end as well too. And we've never seen one that's like quite this horrific, honestly. This might be the grossest one. Yeah, but it's like it comes at such a moment. It comes at like a fist pumping fuck yeah moment where the kid's just like, well, I can, because I would have too. I would have killed him. Also, like, even though you're seeing this insurance salesman agent go through so many trials and stuff, he ends up still fucking up like a bunch of these trials. He makes choices that aren't exactly what the audience might make.
Yeah.
He just genuinely kind of is incompetent. Like, he kind of half seems like he's trying to save everyone, but yeah.
Yeah, he's just the whole time he's like, why? I don't want to do any of this. Can't you all figure it out?
It's an interesting comparison to the movie right before this, where where it's, first of all, you have a black cop who his biggest vice is that he keeps trying to save people, and every time he tries to save someone, they end up dying, which is kind of funny.
Yeah, it is kind of an interesting way to play it, where you're kind of your own worst enemy in a lot of these for Jigsaw.
Yeah.
And he kind of lets you bring your own downfall about. But Hoffman's timer starts and he breaks his hand trying to escape the restraints, then jams the mask in between some metal bars as it activates. He tears his cheek apart to escape, and as he screams, we cut to black, unsure if Hoffman will survive to saw another day or if he will perish, deemed by John to be unworthy. In fact, Costas was even unsure if Hoffman was going to survive at the end, because they shot multiple endings, including one where freaking Strom had set up a trap in revenge in case he died in pursuit of Hoffman.
What?
So, yeah, they were like, we're going to have all kinds of different paths that this could take.
Wow. That would not have made sense.
No. And then after the credits, we get a quick little scene of Amanda going up to Corbett Denton, the daughter of the player in Saw 3, and whispering to her while she's still locked up in that little safe. Remember there was the little girl who was like trapped in the safe, and he was trying to get to her the whole time. She whispers to her while she's still locked up, "Don't trust the one who saves you." One final fuck you to Hoffman from her, and setting up some revenge if Hoffman does in fact make it out of here. The end of Saw, Finn.
Nice.
And I think it's great. I think that it's a super fun movie that does a lot with a franchise that could very easily have been stale at this point. But before I get to that, Brodie, we've reached the point of the show where we sum up why this is not just a good horror movie, but is in fact the best horror movie ever made. And I'm going to let you start.
Even though we just went through all the plot, every set piece really is just like heightened more than the rest of the franchise, because there is this illusion of choice. There is this illusion of there is a right answer. There is a hope of someone's life being saved. And kind of with like the other movies before that, we're seeing someone get trapped in something, and then that they're not going to survive, but they can probably get out like super maimed or something. And this is one of the first times we're seeing a whole movie being predicated on torturing one person through torturing other people. And it's just great.
Yeah.
It's filled with a lot of no-win scenarios, which I like. It's by its nature, it's got a lot more setting up in like plot in like outside world references than I'm usually like privy to. One of the reasons I'm really drawn to things like the Cube and like Hyperion Cantos and stuff is because you start with the torturer and you end with in the same facility. There's not outside stuff you have to find out, and if you do, it's through like these context clues and stuff. This movie isn't like that, and it still ends up working for me just because of a lot of the elements in the franchise that we talked about before. But I mean, like, it really all just comes back to the theme. As cruel as all of these tortures are, none of them really seem as cruel as being an insurance person. None of them truly are. And
big head shake from George for those who can't see right now.
So that's what it really comes down to for me, is like that's the lasting part where, like, before I'm just interested in seeing, you know, what happens with the plot of the story, but this is the first time where I was like, oh, I'm actually rooting for not Jigsaw because he's already dead, but like yeah, his ideas are definitely like flawed. He'd probably be like a libertarian or something, but like
the symbol lives on though.
Yeah, but like I sort of get it. I mean, the one, I think 2 movies before this, when they explore like real estate people, that one was similarly good. But then I think the main theme of that one was just like, can you just work together? You know what I mean? The very simple, efficient concept. And that's where that's where like the franchise got really good. And then for me, this was just a refinement of that, and that's why I think this is just like the best that the Saw franchise has to offer, period.
To me, this is the best horror movie ever made, because where a lot of the Saw movies have kind of gestured at stuff, the fact that this really takes a theme and fully explores it and is really trying to communicate something to people, I think is great. And I think that it really does help bring the franchise to a new level. And it would be interesting if that was all it had going for it. It would still be interesting. Yeah. But for the franchise to reach high points for gore with the dissolving guy at the end, to have really interesting traps like the roundabout shotgun pull where he has to choose which two, you know, some fun performances in that very scene. The very first trap is fun as well, like we talked about. And so it has all that stuff going. The longtime editor being in charge of it really helps to make the whole thing feel cohesive and make sure that the editing is on point, which is so crucial for a movie like this that is jumping around so frequently, both in time and in place. For us to be able to even just be aware of what's happening, I think is a testament to their ability to keep the editing on point. And there's just so much good about this movie. And for it to be in a franchise that a lot of people won't give the time of day for no reason, and to be late in that franchise and really to hit a new high point, that's just fascinating to me. And the fact that it says something is just icing on the cake. So that's why it's the best horror movie ever made. Brodie, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show, man. Yeah. Please tell everyone where they can listen to you, see your writing, all that jazz.
Well, you could follow my podcast, as George mentioned, the Dark Weeb Podcast I do with my friend Cody Ziegler, where we... Friend of the pod, where we talk about nerd stuff, all kinds of nerd stuff, from video games to anime to giant robots, and try to focus on people of color, for sure. Then you can also listen to The Male Gaze, which is the podcast I do about current events with some other comedy friends of mine. And then I think by the time this comes out, I might have an EP, just a serious music EP that I made during the pandemic that might be out, called The Boohoo's The Slump. So you might want to check that out. It's probably got like 5 songs. Same problem. I'm like mixing it right now.
And if it's not out yet, around the corner.
Yeah, exactly. Then I do comedy all over the place, so you can just follow me on Twitter at AyoBroBro. And if I come in your town, definitely come see me at a show and tell me that you listen to the podcast. And then I'll treat you better than other people at the show, for sure.
That's the BLHHiP promise, baby.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely encourage you to check out all that stuff. In particular, I am a fan of the Dark Weeb Podcast. I think it's great.
Thanks, man.
And I think you guys are both great on it. And as far as my plugs, you can check me out on Twitter at LittleHorrorPHL. We're on Patreon as well. If you want bonus episodes, including just more spotlights where we're not as constrained by the best, quote unquote, and kind of just like movie argument episodes and stuff where I'll throw out a topic and then decide between two litigants. All kinds of fun stuff. And also, last thing is, if you want another mailbag episode, you can send in more questions, comments, hypotheticals, all that stuff to bestlittlemaiLbag@gmail.com. That's it, everyone. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.